So, Colossal Wreck. This is a new documentary by, like you hear the name a number of times, but still, it's just like trying to get these pronunciations, people. It's the new film from Josh Appignanesi. I think that's how you say it, right? Yeah, it is his new piece of work. It is written and directed by Josh. Also produced the film. Sound was handled by Dan, and the score is from Vic Sharma. Yeah, that's all the information we have, unfortunately. But that's the nature of these things at times, right? So the gist of this is filmmaker Josh Appignanesi released his climate documentary, My Extinction, in 2023, charting the ride travels of a dad-turned-activist taking protests to the street with XR and unmasking the oil-funded climate skeptic lobbyist Tufton Street. When the film was invited to screen at COP28 in Dubai, he felt he couldn't pass up the opportunity to get a sneaky inside look at the COP circus. Out of this experience comes his latest film, Colossal Wreck. With his innocuous selfie stick, Josh moves unnoticed through Dubai's seductive slickness to reveal the talks, meetings, and elite backroom parties behind the strange mixture of global cry for help and empty political posturing that is COP. Are these enormous gatherings all about false promises that hinder change? Or are they the only hope we've got for world-saving unity? To the activist's eye, COP looks like the enemy, a parade of statesmen and their toothless agreements, while emissions continue to skyrocket. Lost in translation, Josh comes face to face with the irony of an oil baron hosting this last chance climate saloon in a techno-utopian leisure city that happens to be built in a burning desert. Yet the reality of some of the participants he meets at COP was very different, committed, knowledgeable, and resourceful. Specialists in finance, tech, development, law, culture, and science. And of course, if there were no COPs at all, might things have been even worse? Then Josh encounters something that cuts through the noise. Indigenous voices from the front line of climate injustice, including the Brazilian Amazon. People suffering not only from climate change itself, but from the direct actions of those who hasten it. Murder and violation at the hands of those seeking dominion over the natural world and its resources. It is a piercing reminder of what is really at stake. As preparations begin for COP30 in Brazil, and with the stakes higher than ever, Josh provides a lever for debate. In his customary humorous tone, Josh narrates what he saw and what he felt. From irony to despair to hope, from a searingly honest first-person viewpoint that takes us on a journey into the conference at the end of the world. Can global gatherings like COP save the world from itself? Can the global south and indigenous people really have a voice there? Is COP part of the problem or part of the solution, or how both. So yes, that is this new film, right? And it's definitely interesting, right? Because, you know, as mentioned, we get this look at this huge machine. Now, for the most part, like, I think a lot of people have probably heard of COP, right? But what you usually see are clips of, you know, press, oh my days, what do you call them? Press briefings, right? Or panels. That's what you see. You don't see necessarily behind the scenes of these things. So you do get that kind of insight, right? And Josh, you know, he's walking around with his camera, kind of filming it all, right? Which, yeah, like, you wonder sometimes, like, wait, people are letting all of this get filmed, right? There's no pushback on this, which is interesting, right? I mean, there is one bit he's talking to this lady that has a company that uses, if I remember correctly, drones to assess the power efficiency of buildings in London, and I imagine other parts of the UK. But he's holding the camera, but it's not at her face, but it's like, now it's pointed at her chest. So that's what you're seeing as she's talking, you know. But there is something to this, because there's a load of these panels happening. There's a load of these, you know, after parties and things like that, right? There's escape rooms and all of these manner of things where everyone is talking about climate change and what we can do and the effect on the ocean, the effect on, you know, all these other things. Which I think there is an importance of this, but there are a whole heap of other issues that don't seem to get addressed. And as mentioned in the press release, right, it's when you hear from indigenous voices. There's a lady who is talking, is something like the Kawara tribe. I know I butchered that, people, apologies. But she is talking through a translator about her experience, right? And how, you know, government and corporate funded police and militias come and attack their village because, you know, this land is rich with resources. So you want the people off the land, right? And, you know, it's the lady moderating the panel after this woman's talked. She's like, you know, all teary and it's like, I need to give you a hug, which does feel kind of, you know, very, I don't know. There feels a performative element to that. Because what are you going to do after this, right? Once the panel's done, what are you doing about that? Because this is not new. This is something that we have known about that is happening all the time, right? Companies such as Shell, right? They, you know, create oil links in the ocean in countries like Nigeria. There's explosions and different things like that, where they are really, you know, devastating the environment, nothing happens, right? Sometimes these companies are fined, but they just refuse to pay the fines, right? Or the fine is so minimal when you factor in the actual worth of this organization, right? This fine is not going to hurt this thing at all. It's like if you were caught speeding and the fine was 50p. You know what I mean? Like, no one would care because it's like, it's 50p. Like, I can handle that. That's no problem. Let me just give you £5 and I'll just speed for the next few days. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. So after all of these cops, because, you know, it's COP 29, and these things still have not been addressed. So it's just, what does this thing do? One of a lady that helped him get his documentary, you know, at COP, her name's Sophie. He's having a conversation with her at the beach, and she's talking about how great it is for people. You know, you have indigenous people coming in their traditional garb, and, you know, they're not wearing it because they've been told to. They're wearing it because it represents them, and it's just like, well, of course it represents them, right? Like, what else do you think they might possibly wear to something like this? But also, you know, they understand the impact of them coming in traditional garb, right? It's not like they're so naive, they don't understand what it is. No, they understand there is an impact in how you display yourself. So there is, you know what I mean? There's a lot of information here, right? There's these insights that come through different interactions Josh has with people he knows, people he doesn't know, right? With his commentary on some of the panels, some of the parties, just, you know, him navigating the city. So all of this, right, it does kind of give you that viewpoint on COP and the, I guess it's like, reception to climate change, right? Although when you think about it, Al Gore had, you know, was it An Inconvenient Truth, right? I think there was 2 of those films, and I think like the world is meant to have ended by now, right? If you were going through what Al Gore was saying, you know, because when you think about a lot of the lobbyists involved with these things, right? You have lobbyists that worked on, you know, tobacco, right? Who worked on sugar, who have worked on so many different things where they lied, right? Where they tried to pass the buck onto something else. So it is hard at times to go along with some of these narratives, because I think one of the biggest things is, and it's been, you know, talked about a number of times, right? If every country went net zero, right, reduced their emissions, it still doesn't necessarily matter if India and China don't do any sort of curbing of the emissions they're putting out, because that is where the majority is kind of coming from. You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, you can tell everyone to, make all of these changes, but what about that? Right? Because it doesn't matter if they do nothing. But then you have the other thing of the planet has gone through these cycles of heating up, cooling down, heating up, cooling down. So we're kind of in just one of those cycles, Now, obviously, it's not about being, reckless when it comes to these things. But is all of this actually what we're being told it is? And then when you talk about clean energy, right? Because everyone always wants to talk about clean energy. They still haven't really found something that is able to generate on the level that is needed, because you factor in, if this was such a concern for governments, every new house, every new building that is constructed, whether it's private, corporate, residential, they would all come with, solar panels on the roofs, right? That would be a big thing that you would do. We talk about EVs, right? Electronic vehicles. But the batteries that power these things use oh my God, what is it called? Is it carbonite? Yeah, I've got that name wrong. But anyway, the mining of this is horrendous, right? Cobalt. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with me, people? Cobalt, right? The mining of this is horrendous. But that doesn't get talked about. So it's just, we have things like COP, but you wonder, do they actually get to the real issues, right? You can posture, you can, be like, we signed this thing and we mentioned fossil fuels. How great are we? But what about the current harm that's being done? Because you aren't doing anything to stop those things, So, yeah, there is that. But a lot of these things, they're not at COP. So Josh isn't able to address those things in this documentary, He does say towards the start of this that it's by like an AI that has been kind of developed using his voice, which I don't know if that's true or not, right? I don't know. There is a wryness to the narration and the approach, that he's used here, right? I mean, he's kind of showing everything, right? There's a bit where he's filming in his hotel room, and it looks like he's not wearing anything, you know, which is, an interesting choice. There's another bit where we have him, coming from a party and he's peeing in the toilet, which, again, an interesting visual choice. I don't know if we needed to see it, right? But it's there. But yeah, I think he's trying to give his frank, honest, like, opinion of this and his efforts to move the needle on all of this, right? Because when he's talking about the screening of his film at COP, right, that the attendance isn't huge, but he's told that it's more of a online thing, right? And then he's comparing his work to, say, other filmmakers, and right, his friend, I want to say it's Peter, right, who makes viral videos and things such as that. So, he's self-deprecating and all of this, which, right, helps add a little humor, right, to cut through all the other stuff that we see and we have here. I think the real thing is, though, what happens next, right? And I think, where does this get seen, right? Where does this get shown? Because if the movers and shakers do not pay attention to things like this, what real impact can it have? You know what I mean? Right? So I think that's the things you wonder when it comes to documentaries such as this, right? However interesting they are, do they achieve the thing that they're trying to achieve, right? What's the actual impact it can have? But I guess the more people that view it and gain an insight into these machines such as COP, right? Just that little bit of knowledge, right? Giving people that peek behind the curtain. So you understand that Oz isn't this big, magnificent wizard. He's just a man with a speaker, right? Like, I think the more people get that understanding, I think, quicker the changes and, new insights can happen, right? So Colossal Wreck, it drops to the world on the 7th of November. You know what I mean? So, yeah, people, keep an eye out and, give it a watch. Because it's not crazy long. It's 87 minutes, right? So, yeah, it's not crazy long, but it is interesting. You know what I mean? It is interesting. So, yeah, let me know what you think, if you've seen it, or is this something that has been on your radar or could be on your radar? Okay, so yeah, that's my thoughts on Colossal Wreck.